you and I both have people in our life that are more codependent than a dog, because dogs are codependent on us. Without us, they don't get food, they don't get sunshine, they don't get walks. Yep. So what's your advice to someone? Because sometimes people will stay in a relationship just because they got nobody else.
Yeah.
Just because the sex might be great. I can put up with everything just to have the sex, or I don't want to be lonely.
Yeah.
So you've been in those positions?
I've been in a lot of positions.
So when you find yourself by yourself, are you able to live with yourself? Meaning, are you able to accept now, even though you still go through things and we understand, are you able to accept now that, I'll be okay? And how do you do that? So when people are listening, I want them to, if you can do it, how can they do it?
Well, I had to recognize that I was a lonely person, and
how did you do that?
That I didn't like to be alone. Well, I went to therapy because I couldn't do it myself.
How long ago did you start therapy?
I started therapy. Well, I've always dealt with like pretty intense anxiety disorder and depression. So that started more when I was like 18. I didn't go to therapy until 20 years old. And after therapy, I realized, I have a problem that I can't fix by myself.
Can I ask you a question? And a lot of people I don't think understand this. There's therapists out there that are wonderful, but there's also therapists. I work in a community where there's different cultures, there's different people, whether they're gay, straight, go by different pronouns, whatever. Did you find a therapist that understood your culture as well? Because I think a lot of people go to therapy and they think, you're a therapist, you got a PhD. You're very smart. Well, if they don't understand where you're coming from, so how did you find someone who understood your culture? Was it an African-American therapist? If you don't mind me asking that, because I think it's important that people know you don't just go to the first person that says they're a therapist.
Yeah. So the first thing that happened was I did like a telehealth therapist where, you talk to them over the phone. My first therapist was in college, and it was like a campus therapist. She was young, an Asian woman. She was really nice, but I just didn't feel she was like understanding me. And so I stopped going to her, and then I went to a man, and I was like, I don't think a man is gonna help me either, like for what I need. And then I was like, I think what I need is someone who I can see myself in, or who like feels like they could really understand me from the deep core. If I'm talking about something that I dealt with that only a Black child can deal with and like knows about, or some things that are so rooted in our culture and our history that stem from like my issues, I need someone who can understand that. So I, at the end of the day, went to a Black woman who I felt understood me the most, but it's really just about like who you feel like you can listen to the most.
That's an important thing for people to realize, that it's about who you feel. Even if it's you went to a Black woman and for a period of time went great, but then it didn't go great because the mind is the mind. However we're born, whatever family, religion, what have you, that's a different thing. But finding someone who really understands you, doesn't matter who they are, what they are. But I think it's interesting that a lot of times, like in my field, we'll have a lot of young gay men and women that come in, and some of the therapists never worked with the gay community. Yeah. They can do more harm than they can do anything, because you're taking someone and not understanding, and you're saying, well, here's what you need to do. When a therapist tells you, here's what you need to do, you get out the door, you set their house on fire, because let me tell you, they don't know what you need to do. They should just, and again, a joke, they should basically guide you to make those decisions and say, here's one, here's another. So how long ago you went to therapy? So do you still see a therapist?
I don't, because I didn't think I needed it at the time anymore. But again, like as you grow up, you start uncovering more things that you need to fucking fix. You're just like I feel like a car. Like you just always have to do maintenance. And so
hopefully
I need to go back.
New car, yes.
I think at this point in time in my life, I feel like I need a therapist.
Well, the good thing is you're willing to admit it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're willing to admit it. And that's the hardest thing to do, is telling yourself like you have a problem. And again, like the answer to your last question about how I learned that I wasn't okay with being alone. I went to therapy, and I physically decided to be single for 2 years. I was like, I'm not going to date. I'm just going to be alone. I lived alone. So I spent a lot of time alone, and I realized how much I like spending time with myself and being alone, because, I was doing puzzles, I was drinking in my own house, and I was having a fucking fun time. And
please tell me you're not a cat person.
I am. I have 2 cats.
Oh, there you go. Cat ladies. Ladies, look what you have to look forward to. 2 years of solitude with cats.
Yeah.